Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Catching Up with the Backs. Today, we're going to go way back to the Silverbacks' very first season in 2001-2002. We're going to chat with someone who won back-to-back NCAA National Championships with the Denver Pioneers, and then he went on to play pro in the AHL, ECHL, Germany, Austria, and Norway. Please welcome Adrian Veideman. Adrian, thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for reaching out, and it's always a pleasure to reconnect with your past and just, a thank you to all the fans and everybody that was involved in my time there.
Yeah, really looking forward to this. Of course, very first season you played here as a Silverback 2 seasons, but also, of course, you grew up in Sicamous. So we'll talk about that. But before we dive in, let's just talk about what you've been up to. Where are you joining from? And just tell us a little bit about the next step in your career.
Yeah, I retired from my first career, which was hockey, about 5 years ago now. I moved back. I currently live in Denver, Colorado. My wife's from here. We met at DU, so we settled down here, and this has been home since I came here in 2003, and there's no better place for us to be, and close to her family, and just enjoying my new career. I'm in residential real estate and just enjoying helping people buy and sell houses, as well as I'm still coaching. I coach at Valor Christian High School in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, and enjoying some success there as a coach and as a mentor for younger players.
Awesome, and I'll leave that to the end. I'll also ask about why getting into coaching. But first, let's go back to when you were a kid, born in Sicamous, played for the Eagles. So can you just talk about that season of junior with the Eagles, what it was like to kind of play for your hometown team?
Well, just to correct you, I was actually born in Salmon Arm because Sicamous doesn't have a hospital, right? But, growing up in Sicamous, we always, you got to go watch the Eagles, and that was the biggest deal, getting to play for your hometown, junior B team at that time. And, trying to crack that lineup was difficult for me just because I was always referred to as the AP player, the guy that could come up and play some games, but then he could get sent back down to midgets. And, my final year in Sicamous, they basically had to keep me because just how I was performing. Getting to play there was special for me, just because it was, number one, my hometown, but also I got to play with my brother. That was one of the last times I got to play with him and play on a line with him. And actually, Andrew Ebbett was our other line mate. And, so it was just a really fun experience, great group of players and good friends. It's difficult to keep up with, a lot of these guys after, being away from there for so long, but just the history that, that Eagles program has it's incredible. The amount of players that have come through such a small organization and a small league, and to be a part of that is something that I cherish for sure.
You mentioned Andrew Ebbett. You and him and a few other Eagles then would play on the Silverbacks the next season. So can you just talk about kind of the feeling of maybe knowing that you're going to play for the Silverbacks in their very first year when you first found out it was going to happen, what that feeling was like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this is a story that you probably don't know, but I actually quit hockey after my year with the Eagles, and I didn't know I was going to play for the Silverbacks until. So I quit hockey, and my mother always pushed education. So I had enrolled to go to Mount Royal College in Calgary, and it just turned out that I was just at a tough spot. I didn't really enjoy the game all that much. Had a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, so I was done. I didn't train at all that summer in between coming to play for the Silverbacks. But the week before training camp started for the Silverbacks, I had gotten a call from Gary Davidson, knowing that he knew that I was planning to go to school, but he wanted me to come try out. And I talked to my parents, and they encouraged me, just go and see what happens. And after the second day, they basically said that I made the team if I wanted to play. And, I guess the rest is history, right? But, that was an incredible feeling. And it's just so funny to think about how it changed the direction of my life in so many incredible and positive ways. I'm forever thankful to Gary for that phone call. That transition for me to go play for Salmon Arm was, it was intimidating. I'm not going to lie. That jump from junior B up to junior A was intense. It was, I'm playing against grown men now. I'm just still a skinny kid from Sicamous and getting pushed around pretty good and not used to as much of the physical side of the game. But from a maturity side, I had to mature really quickly. I'd never lived away from home. Gary said that, we're going to get you a billet family, even though, you live 20 minutes from home. So that was an incredible experience for me, getting to mature and have to do my laundry and kind of fend for myself a little bit and, just learn to manage my time effectively. Even though I had already graduated from high school, it was a big eye-opener for me, just having to learn how to compete, learn how to train off the ice, because I'd never really been exposed to weightlifting or plyometric training or anything like that. So those were the big steps for me. And, I knew early on that, I had a shot to get a scholarship and play at the next level above that. But until that point, college hockey was never even on my radar, so it was just a very positive time in my life. I had an enormous amount of fun, and, just getting to play with some of these players was awesome.
What do you remember most from the first ever game, the first Silverbacks game against Vernon? Is there any memories you can share about that game?
I don't necessarily remember the game itself. I just remember the atmosphere of that first year. I like to refer to it as drinking out of a fire hose. You try to take all of it in, and again, you don't realize how special it was until after it's over. But playing in the Shaw Center, it was the atmosphere that was really why it opened my eyes. Throughout my career, I played in some very big games and with a ton of fans. And, just thinking back to the junior years, it was no different. Even though it was much less people, it was probably as loud. The fans were just as crazy about their hometown team. And, we were able to connect with the fans a little bit more off the ice than, playing college and playing professionally. And, so that was a special thing as well. And for me, being from Sicamous, a lot of my high school teachers and my elementary school teachers, they all lived in Salmon Arm. So they would come to the games and support me. And a lot of my high school friends would be there. And obviously, it meant the world that my parents could be at every single game. And those were some of the last times they got to see me play, on a consistent basis. But those are things that I never realized, and I kind of took them for granted. But after the fact, it's one of those things that you look back on and you're like, wow, that was a pretty awesome thing that these people could come see me on a nightly basis.
You mentioned the jump from junior B to junior A, it being a bit of a gap. Can you just talk about the on-ice product of maybe the BCHL as a whole? What made it strong in your 2 years here? Maybe what surprised you?
Well, I think the biggest thing was the coaching. And it falls in line with more of accountability. I remember one of my first practices, and we're doing just, we're getting ready for the season. So there's a lot of bag skating. There's a lot of, training that still needs to happen to get us up to game ready. And we're doing a skating drill. And, I maybe cut a line short, by an inch or two. And, Gary blows the whistle, blows the play down, and he just starts screaming at me from across the ice. And I'm like, what is this? Who's this guy screaming at me? He can't be screaming at me. And sure enough, he's screaming at me. I didn't stop past the line, and that was immediately for me. I was like, holy crap. I mean, we're not messing around here. This is big boy hockey. So from that point on, I made a point to myself that, hey, okay, if this is what it's about, I have to have that attention to details. I have to be accountable for my failures, if you will, or even my successes. But that was the biggest step for me, the accountability. It was never about my natural ability. It was more about the mental side of the game and making sure that I wasn't just turning the switch on and off. I was getting prepared away from the rink to be the best at the rink.
The team did well in its first year, finished third in the division for an expansion team, pretty good. What do you think maybe allowed the team to, in its first year right off the hop, come in and compete like every night? You guys finished in the standings pretty high. What was it about the team that led to maybe a successful first season?
I think it was the leadership and the coaching. Just talking to Gary and Rylan now and even after that season, well, you see how serious these guys are about hockey. And that was an eye-opener for me because, just a 19-year-old or 18-year-old from Sicamous, you're just like, oh, well, season's over, let's go play golf. But for these guys and, especially the guys that were aging out and that was their final game, you just don't really understand that situation until you're thrust into it. The seriousness of it, and obviously looking back on it now, I wish we could have gone all the way in that first year. That would have been just special. But the intensity that it took to get to that point, and the amount of growing that I had to do personally and physically and as a hockey player, that was probably one of my biggest stepping stone years, as far as opening my eyes to what's out there and to what I could be and what it takes for a team to be successful. Because, I saw how hard we worked and how much blood, sweat, and tears was put into that season and that program. And to fall short like that, I didn't know at the time, but, I understand now that it's a failure.
Now, so year one to year two then. Year two, one of the most successful regular seasons. I know it's just the regular season, but new faces. Yeah.
Look at the players on that roster. Are you kidding me?
That's what I was going to ask about. What was it like to play with some? I mean, we're talking Zajac and 2 100-point scorers. What was that like?
You know what? I was named captain my second year, so that's where my role kind of changed a little bit. Now, I've been through the war. I've been through the battle. I know what it sort of takes, to at least get to the playoffs. Now I've got a different, I don't want to use the word agenda, but now I've got different responsibilities. Now I've got NHL draft picks on my team, and these kids are highly, highly touted, and for good reason. They're incredible players. I mean, Zajac is incredible. He just played his 1000th game in the NHL. And we've got Brady Murray. He's unbelievable. And we've got, Alex Nikiforuk with us, who's a good friend of mine still. We've got Chris Chucko on that team, who, first BC-born kid to go play in Minnesota. So now I'm kind of at a crossroads where I'm kind of thrown into a leadership role, and I've got to try and mentor these kids. Well, it becomes more of a battle off the ice, where it's trying to get everybody on the same page to be successful on the ice. So it's fun to play with those players. It really is. They're very, very talented. It becomes difficult from a leadership standpoint to get everybody into a line.
I just want to get a word quick on Zajac. You mentioned, of course, just played in his 1,000th career NHL game. Can you share what it was like to be a teammate of him? And maybe also, as someone who has played pro, can you put into perspective how big of an accomplishment, like people hear 1,000 games, 1,000 games in the NHL. Can you just maybe tell the viewers how difficult and big of an accomplishment that would be?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I feel lucky that I got to play with Travis. I feel blessed at that. And I also feel blessed that I got to play against him in college. I had a little advantage against him because I knew some of his weaknesses, if you will. But it's a player like that doesn't get to play 1,000 games in the NHL if their hockey IQ is not through the roof. And, the longevity of it, that is probably the most impressive part about this whole situation. And he just hit 1,000 games. My good friend from Sicamous, Shea Weber, also just hit 1,000 games. And it takes a lot more than skill to be able to do that. And, people don't understand that, an 82 game schedule in the NHL is a grind. It's an absolute grind. You're on the airplane. You're in a different city every night. You really have to learn how to manage your mental side of the game, and knowing that not every night you're going to be not physically at your best, but you have to be mentally sharp, and so that you're not letting your teammates down and you're being a good leader, because let's face it, at the professional level, it's even more cutthroat than the junior level. It's you're getting sent down, you're just getting straight up cut, and that's your livelihood at that point. A good friend of mine is Will Butcher, who plays for the Devils currently. So he and I communicated the day of Travis's 1,000th game, and it's just, again, people don't understand how long that takes and how much work away from the scenes it takes to get prepared for, an NHL season. I've never had an NHL season, so I can't completely speak to that, but just knowing what I know, it's incredible.
You mentioned Will Butcher, and we see here nice Denver jerseys in the background. Can you just explain your scholarship to Denver? How did that come about?
It probably took about 3, 4, 5 months after, starting my rookie season. Now I'm seeing players starting to commit to schools, and, I would have a few schools start reaching out to Gary and talking to me, and, it was a good feeling to have that sort of interest in you. But it wasn't until that first off season when I took big strides in my strength and my off-season workouts, and got back for my second year that I really started to get some interest. And at that time, you were allowed to have 5 visits. So I lined up 5 visits, Denver being the first visit. So, I go down to Denver on my visit, and I'm wearing my Silverbacks tracksuit because that's what I have, right? I haven't been exposed to culture, so I get to the big city and take a visit at Denver, and I remember going up to the coach's office on my visit at Denver, and they offered me a full scholarship at that time, and I was just like, wow, it was hard for me to believe that, I lacked a little bit of confidence at that point of time in my life and my career. And it was hard for me to believe what somebody saw in me as a player and as a person. And I couldn't have been, that's the pinnacle, right? For a 20-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid to be able to commit to something like that, and just knowing what their coaching staff thought about me. And, that was probably arguably the biggest success and life changer that I ever experienced.
We'll talk about your time at Denver in just a sec, but just a few more looking back on your Silverback days. I mean, obviously growing up in Sicamous, but you said you billeted. You did not live at home. So what was your billet experience like during your time here? Yeah,
so I lived with Rob and Lynn Forche and their daughter Carrie and son Mitch, and that first year Jeremy Mitchell was our second billet with us, and my second year was Craig Switzer, who was also a good friend of mine, who played at UNH. Amazing family, treated me like their son. There wasn't a day where I came home and there wasn't a hot meal on the table. I mean, they were so fantastic. They even let me stay with them during the summertime to train in Salmon Arm, even though Sicamous was 20 minutes away. It was just a better atmosphere for me. It was a little bit more maturing. It was a little bit more self-independence. And they had a pool. I mean, what else could you argue with, right? Carrie was fantastic. She was, one of my biggest fans. And still throughout my pro career was, one of my biggest fans. And Rob was, the man of the house. And, it was so funny during the summertime. We would have a couple beers at that point, and, they just treated me like their own. And that was very special to me. And I appreciate everything that they did for me. And again, once it's over, you appreciate it even more, and that you don't realize the sacrifices that these people make.
You talked a little bit earlier about, the packed buildings and how involved the community was with the team, but are there any specific memories or experiences that just stand out to you about the fan support and the community support of the Silverback organization in its early days? Is there anything in particular that stands out?
I just more so remember kind of the rowdier fans and how involved they were and how they would travel to games. I wasn't in high school at the time. I know that there was a love-hate relationship with, the players, and that carried through my whole career anyway. So that wasn't something new at that point. But, I was a part of the game with the streaker in Vernon. So it was just fun to see how much they cared. And it was something that they brought loyalty to, and they wanted to be around us away from the rink, and they wanted to support everything good that was going on with the Silverbacks. And I remember how loud that building was in Salmon Arm, when we made the playoffs and clinched our playoff berth. And I remember putting on my jersey for the first time and going out for that first game and hearing how loud it was and how much people were excited for the team. And, even when we were losing, the atmosphere was positive. It wasn't, it wasn't fire the coach. It was, they're rallying around the team, whether we won or lost. So, from a noise level, I would compare it a lot to the games that I played in Europe in some of those smaller venues, which was cool. They loved it. The fans loved it. We loved it even more. I'm sure the guys that were fighting and being physical, they loved it because, that's what got the crowd going.
Awesome. Now, obviously you reside now in Denver, as you said, but how often in normal times, how often are you able to, and do you come back to Sicamous Do you come back? How often? And how often?
It's been a while since I've been back. I've got a 4-year-old and a soon-to-be 2-year-old. Before that, I would try to get back kind of once a year or every other year if I could. Since the kids have been born, my parents have tend to come down once a year. But that's definitely something I got to start doing more, is getting up there. And I'm really looking forward to taking my kids back up there and showing them where Dad grew up, and getting into salmon arm and doing things that I did when I was a kid. And a big night for us in Sicamous was to pack up the car and drive 20 minutes down the road to go to the movie theater, right? I mean, now I pack up my car and drive my daughter to school and it takes me 25 minutes. So, just to put it in perspective, it's, it was, times were much simpler when I grew up. I really cherish those times, and I want to be able to expose my kids to that, and my family to how I grew up. So that it's on my radar to get up there more, definitely.
Let's transition and talk about your time with the Denver Pioneers. So first off, what was that transition like from Junior A, from the Silverbacks and the BCHL, to your first year? How difficult maybe was that transition?
Very. The biggest difficulty for me was getting back into the school routine. Getting back into, you learn really quickly how to time manage your time. You're waking up at 6 a.m, you're going to work out, then you're grabbing a bite to eat, then you're heading to class till 2 o'clock. Then you're going right to the rink for practice for 2+ hours. Then you're leaving. Then you're going back to study, because if you don't study and your GPA is not above 2.0, well, I'm sorry, you can't play hockey. So there's a lot more accountability with it. I chose Denver not only because of the hockey, but because of the academics and school rating. I learned really quickly how tough school was. I was never a straight A student at college. I was right around that 3.0 GPA. But the pros of college were incredible. Just getting that experience of the life with college students, living in a big city, having incredible teammates, going on incredible runs as a hockey team, and winning championships. I mean, there's a great deal of pride that I had to learn about quickly with these schools, and a history. The hockey itself was another animal. Now you're playing against guys that are in their mid-20s, and I was a 20-year-old freshman. So I was older, and now I'm still playing against guys that are 4 years older than me. So now I'm playing against guys with full beards. Some of them were married, it's just different. So now the game becomes that much more physical, and the speed of the game was incredible. So it took a little bit for me to get accustomed to that.
You mentioned going on runs, NCAA champion as a freshman, if I'm not mistaken. Can you describe that experience?
Well, I mean, I was ignorant. I was naive to the fact of what it takes. We weren't a very good team that year. We scraped into the national tournament. The difference for us was our leadership. We had the amount of character on our team was probably the most character I've had on a team ever. As far as guys knowing their roles as players, just the amount of things that had to go our way for us to get there. We had no business. I mean, in that championship game in Boston, we killed off a 6-on-3 for 1 minute and 30 seconds to end that game. to win it 1-0. So there's just so many things that you can't explain for that to happen. And then you throw on top of that the fact that I was a freshman, and I'm like, okay, now I'm exposed to this. It's going to happen every single year. And, it just, it doesn't really work that way. But, there's, getting to play in a championship game in TD Garden in Boston, and the President of the United States is in the building, and excuse me, there's 18,000 people in the building, and you win it, and the head of school comes in the locker room, and it's the pictures tell the story, but it's complete chaos. There's reporters everywhere and guys crying and screaming, and it's it was a lot to take in. And then, the next year we do it again, so it's 2005 was even more special to me because I didn't realize what it took to win it. Now, 2005 was a completely different team, and our team was insane. I mean, we won everything possible. I think we lost 7 games all year. We had Paul Stastny was on our team, and Matt Carl, who was a Hobie Baker winner, who was in my class, and just the amount of talent we had alone was, and then you put on top of that the amount of leadership and the characters in the locker room. Those are special moments that, I'll never forget the rest of my life. And then again, you think, well, I've done it too. I'm going to do it 4 years in a row, right? And then my junior and senior years, we don't even make the tournament, so there's a harsh reality in that as well.
So while your final 2 years, you don't make the tournament, but still, I'm sure there's highlights, including, being named captain must have been one of them. Can you talk about what that honor meant to you?
Well, at that point I was a senior, so, I've been exposed to 3 years of the culture and the history and the alumni support, and you really get a sense of how much pride is in the program itself. I remember my meeting with George Gwostecki, who was the coach at that time, about me being named captain, and it was a special feeling to be given that honor for a program that has such storied history, and not only that, being trusted with passing on that culture to the players that are coming after me. Like you said, not a very successful season, but from a personal standpoint, being named the captain of the University of Denver was, again, one of my biggest highlights in my career. So let's move on. We're going to start with the beginning of your pro hockey career. Can you take us through, well, I'm just looking here, your first year. It looks like you played in Augusta, Georgia in the ECHL.
I did.
What was that like? I assume not much of a hockey bet.
Well, it was actually a little surprising. So my house was actually on the backside of number 16 of Augusta National.
No way.
The golf course. So that was cool. I got to go to the Masters that year. That was a difficult year for me. It was a difficult transition. Now I've just come from college life. Everything is, you have the support of the world behind you. You've got a program that gives you everything you need and to be a successful athlete and a student. And now college is over. I've got my degree. I'm going to try this pro hockey thing. And you realize how really quickly how many players there are out there. I signed a PTO, we call it a professional tryout or agreement. And, you're making $600 a week, and you're trying to not spend money because you don't know where your next meals coming from, and it's just such a different experience. And you throw on top of that I'm away from my friends, and I'm away from where I actually want to be and where I had so much fun, and your mind starts pulling you in a lot of direction as far as well, do I really want to be doing this sort of thing? And I got called up to the American hockey that year. I was successful at the East Coast hockey level. So I ended up getting called up at the end of the year. And then you see what that next step is at the American Hockey League, and it's even more cutthroat. And it doesn't, I was an undrafted player, so it doesn't matter necessarily what you do, because the sixth round draft pick is going to get an opportunity before you. So there's a lot of politics involved in it, a lot of mind. You have to be mentally strong.
The following year, well, you mentioned the AHL and having to be mentally tough. So you stuck with it. You played it a year, I guess, and then a little more. You also went to Peoria and Iowa in the AHL. Can you just talk about your AHL season and then the decision to go overseas? That's, I guess, two different questions. But first, your time in the AHL.
Yeah, so I played a full season with Des Moines in the American Hockey League. Great city, great organization. It was with Anaheim at the time. I had an amazing roommate, so it made our situation really fun. But again, I was healthy scratch for the first close to 2 months of the season. And that's the mental battle that really occurs that people don't see at the professional level. And when I finally got my shot to play, I played well, so that's why I kept getting into the lineup. And, but it took a while to get that opportunity. And then the following year, I signed a contract, in St. Louis. So I was with their farm team in Peoria, Illinois. Same sort of thing, I had a successful year in Des Moines, and now I get to a new team, a new organization, and I'm sitting in the stands for, a couple of months or 3 months. I think I played, probably 10 games by Christmas or 14 games by Christmas. And that's when the opportunity presented itself that, hey, this might not be for me. My NHL dreams might not come to fruition. So I took a lucrative deal and went over to Germany for a year and a half. It took a lot of getting accustomed to. That was some major culture shock for me. I remember my first day in Germany, get finished with practice. One of my teammates tells me where the grocery store is, and I'm trying to find this thing, and I get into the grocery store. And I remember I'm just a sensory overload. Everybody's speaking German. I don't know what this meat I'm buying is. I don't know how much it is. I don't know a lot of these things. I remember going down an aisle in the grocery store, and I just broke down and I start crying. And I called my mom from this aisle, and I'm 27, 28 years old, and I'm like, what am I doing? But it got better quickly. The European style of game was right up my alley. That was my bread and butter. That's everything I was good at. The atmospheres at those rinks were incredible. I like to tell people that the hockey was the bonus. It was the lifestyle that was the best part about being over there. You're playing 40 games. You play 40 games, you get 2-week breaks. They give you a house, they give you a car. You're making tax-free salary. So it's like, there was no complaints from me, after that first couple of months of getting accustomed to the lifestyle and how things were run. Those were the best professional years that I had, were those 6 years over in Europe.
You talked about obviously very much enjoying playing in Germany. After that, you went to Austria for a few years.
Yeah.
How was that maybe different?
My best three and my most favorite three were my 3 years in Austria. The people there were incredible. The cities were beautiful. The teams I played for were awesome. I won a championship in Linz. That team was incredible. They all, same type of thing. It had nothing really. We weren't the more skilled team. We were the more cohesive team, and we had the character on that team, and we just had the most fun on and off the ice, and that's what brings those teams together. And then after that year in Linz, I played in Vienna for 2 years, which if you have the chance to get over there, I would highly suggest not skipping Vienna. Beautiful city. The people are amazing. So those were the best 3 years I had over there. My fiance at the time would come in for a couple of weeks a year. We got to explore and just take great vacations. And like I said, the hockey was the bonus. The best part was just the lifestyle and getting out of practice at noon and taking the train downtown and sitting and having a coffee and just watching people and just getting to experience the whole gamut of what it's about to live over there.
So you mentioned kind of obviously culturally it's very different over in Europe, and I'm just wondering if there's kind of a thread that puts the places together, the commonalities maybe with Austria and Germany and Norway, and maybe culturally different to here. What was it there that makes it like off the ice? How different is it over there, and is it things maybe that are better?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I noticed was there was a great deal of pride taken in your downtime. And it was, you're not working all day. You're going to sit and have a coffee downtown. You're going on a bike ride. You're going on a walk. You're not working. You're just not. And I think the thing that benefited those people was when you do go and start your day at work, you are more driven, you're more productive because, hey, I'm only working 4 hours today and the rest of the day is mine. And that's something that I've tried to bring to my everyday life here is things that I learned from over there. And people were just generally happier. There wasn't, we didn't see as much negativity. People they absolutely loved the hockey teams. They loved their soccer teams. They love sports, but they also love their time to do whatever they want, So that was a key thing that I noticed just from living over there,
So you did, of course, you finished your career back in North America, played for the Colorado Eagles.
I did.
Yeah. How did that opportunity come about? So
I had some opportunities to still keep playing over in Europe, and I was, what was I at that time? 33 or 34 years old at that time, and I didn't want to play until I couldn't play anymore, because now I would be close to 40 years old, and now I'd have to start a new career, and it didn't seem like the right fit for me. By the time I had gotten to my last year in Colorado, I was able to live at my own house in Denver, and I got to finish my immigration and get my green card completed so I could start working at that point. But that was a good swan song for me, if you would. Just because from a personal level, I still showed myself that I could compete and play, and even with all these young guys around me, produce. I was first team all league that year. Even though our team wasn't that successful, I still showed myself that I could still play, and I was kind of going out on top and on my own terms. Very proud of the career I had, and very thankful for everything that was given to me along the way. starting with the Eagles, then through the Salmon Arm Silverbacks, and up from there.
So what was the transition like then after to full time? How did it work getting into real estate after that last year of hockey?
Well, there was a lot of failures, more failure than I probably accumulated over my 20-year hockey career. But it was the intangible skills that I learned from hockey that got me through that, from the coaching, from the accountability, from the countless times I've been knocked down and wanted to get up and wrap my stick around somebody's head, but you just can't do those sorts of things. And it's, I'm in a very self-driven career, but that drive has come from everything that I've been taught from the game.
Awesome. So, well, in addition to real estate, you mentioned off the top helping coaching. So why is that kind of a passion that still burns? Was it the logical way to stay involved in the game?
It's logical to stay in the game. I don't have a driving passion to become a full-time coach, but I do have a driving passion to try and pass on what I know about the game and pass on my experiences to kids that are still trying to become better at this thing. And, I coached, right when I retired, I coached for 2 years at a AAA level, very high level for youth hockey. Didn't really like what I saw from a parent standpoint and the pressure standpoint being pushed onto these kids. And I didn't really enjoy it because now I'm being thrust back into the things that are important in the game. And the thing that's most important is, number one, the kids enjoying what they're doing and learning the intangible skills. I mean, just because of the sheer amount of kids that don't make it, you have to be able to provide something to them that's going to make them better people at the end of the day. So I've been with Valor Christian High School for 3 years now. The head coach is actually my old college coach, George Wozdecky. I've been his assistant coach for 3 years, and it's just been really fun getting to see him pass on his knowledge, and I'm passing on my knowledge of the game and the sport. And hopefully these kids are taking it in, but a lot of them are still raw and young and have a lot of growing up to do.
Lastly, I just want to end off on, we've gone kind of through your journey, your whole career. I want to know any advice for junior kids, players looking for that scholarship. They're putting in the work, putting in the training. What's your advice for them to help them get to the next level?
I think the biggest thing and the biggest pressing issue that we're seeing with kids trying to get to the next level right now is you have to be the total package. You can't just be a good hockey player anymore and get away with it. You have to be an outstanding student. You have to be an even better person. You have to treat people with respect. Social media is a dangerous place for a lot of people. And if you're able to stay away from the nonsense and keep your career on the right path, you have a really good chance. Because at the end of the day, if you're not willing to do everything to be the best person first and hockey players second, you're selling yourself short. The odds aren't in your favor to advance. So you need to take care of yourself as a person, and your education should be number one. You growing in your maturity and your own skin, as well as being a hockey player. But the priority isn't being a hockey player anymore. It's being an outstanding person, and passing along positive vibes and being encouraging and being a leader. Whether you're a natural leader or not, you might not know that you're a natural leader, but there's a number of ways to be a leader, and that's not just being vocal all the time. It's passing on encouragement and being proud of your friend or your colleague when they're doing something that's fantastic, even though you're not the one doing it. There's just a lot of things that this world is missing right now. I know a lot of the players are missing the game, but this is a good opportunity for them to grow and learn who they are and how they can become better, not only at the game, but be better at being a human and being better at encouragement and being positive and sending people the right message, which I know the Silverbacks are all about.
Thanks so much, Adrian, for taking the time. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, you got it. Sorry to be so long-winded at times, but I don't have ESPN come calling anymore. I don't have the opportunity. So when these do come along, I like to talk. So
all good. Lots of goodies.